Hello and welcome to GA30 Deeds here on JLJ Media. I'm the JLJ of JLJ Media. I say that 5 times fast, as we always try to do, or not. We are here with one of my most popular shows, GA30 Deeds. And, we do character spotlights. A lot of times I do them by myself. And I said, this time I'm going to bring someone in. And we know it's for fun, and it's kind of like tongue-in-cheek. But actually, you might learn something too at the same time while we're talking. So I brought in an actual forensic psychiatrist who handles lots of true crime stuff and people with different disorders and issues, we'll say it that way. So help me welcome from merry old England, Dr. Sohom Das. Dr. Das.
Mr. Lotz, how are you doing, sir? Always a pleasure.
Good. Same here. Okay, so as folks we're on YouTube under JLJ Media, so make sure you like, subscribe, and comment because I need it. And then we're also on all audio streaming service platforms. So Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, Deezer, whatever they are, go there, find GA30 Deeds, and like and follow. Whatever the button says you're supposed to do, subscribe, just hit it. Those are your church announcements for today. But we're here to have some fun. Cyrus is played by Emmy winner Jeff Culber. And if you want to see my interview, or actually it's Tammy, but either way, if you want to see our interviews with him from last year's win, go to our Daytime Emmy specials. And we actually interviewed him before he won and after he won. Just lucked out that way. So go ahead and check out Jeff. Jeff is amazing actor on General Hospital. So first I have to ask you, because he is from England. He's not from America. And I'm introducing you to kind of American soap. I know, of course, of EastEnders. I used to watch Casualty. But I know it's Hollyoaks, Coronation Street. I know Neighbours is in Australia. That's a big, we've heard of that one, of course, and Home and Away and all these things. So do you call them soaps in England like we do?
Yeah, absolutely. Soap operas. I think the biggest ones are EastEnders. And you mentioned Neighbours. That used to be huge. I think it's peaked and it's
coming back. It's
decreasing.
gone. It's coming back apparently.
I heard that, yeah. But in my childhood, that was the huge thing, even more so than the English soap operas. Everybody at school would watch Neighbours.
Because Kylie Minogue, hello, Minogue is my time period. Kylie Minogue and Jason Donovan, hello, they came from Neighbours. You know who they are. You know that girl, Kylie Minogue. Yes, I know of that show, but I know of course, EastEnders. I watched it faithfully through the 90s and 2000s. The Mitchell brothers, all that. I used to watch all that stuff back then.
Yeah. And then there was Coronation Street. That used to be huge. So EastEnders is obviously set in London, which is the south of England. And I think the rest of the country, not so much nowadays, but a few decades ago, felt a bit underrepresented in TV. And then Coronation Street happened, which was like a Yorkshire town, and people up north loved it.
So now I'm introducing Dr. Dawes to an American soap opera that's 60 years old, as you know, General Hospital. And so you've never really seen any of our soaps, have you?
No, American soaps. I think I've vaguely heard of some of them, but they're not, as far as I know, they're not shown sort of regularly, at least not on our main channels. They might be on cable channels. I've probably heard the most of Days of Our Lives because it's mentioned on Friends. I have heard of General Hospital, but I'd never seen an episode until you sent me clips.
Yeah. So we have 4 soaps left in America, folks, as you know. General Hospital, which we do this show. The Young and the Restless, which just turned 50. The Bold and Beautiful, which is 30. It started the year I graduated high school. What was that? 87. So it's 36 years old. I graduated high school 36 years ago. And now I feel old suddenly. And Days of Our Lives is it's almost 60 or something too. They've been around for a long time. So these soaps have been around.
Actually, the one thing I forgot is Dallas. Dallas also was huge when I was a kid. So did that stop and then it was restarted recently? Did I get that right?
So what happened was, we say here in America, and Dallas was huge in London. Actually, really was huge.
Yeah.
It started in 78, ended in 93. Then it came back like in 2013 for like 3 seasons, and then it went away. So yes, you're right. So we did recently, yes. But I know when the Who Shot, it was before you were probably born, the Who Shot JR phenomenon. I used to have a T-shirt, but he said that he went to London, Larry Hagman, and they didn't realize how big it was in London, that London really loved Dallas also. Yeah. So it makes sense. I get confirmation you knew as a kid, you knew it was big. J.R. Ewing, that was the guy. He was the man.
Yeah.
My brother's name is J.R. after him. So it's kind of this funny, it's a whole funny thing. He loves J.R. So Dallas, that was international. They do sell Bold and the Beautiful and Young and the Restless international nighttime shows. Like you said, it might be on some off channel that you don't have. I mean, we have 4 main channels, then we have basic cable, then we have So I don't know what you guys have. I think you guys have BBC One, Two, Three. I can't remember what you guys have over there.
Yeah, so BBC, well, everything's changed now because of streaming, but when it used to be main channel, so as before kind of the 2000s, there were 4 main channels, and then a 5th one happened in my lifetime. I remember the launch of Channel 5 when I was probably my early teens. So there were 5 channels, before Sky and before streaming took over.
Yeah, we had 3 channels for the longest time: ABC, CBS, NBC, and then Fox. Fox came, and that was a big deal. We had Married with Children and all these shows. It was like the Tracy Ullman show, Living Color. We had all those shows. We're like, oh my God, it was like a big deal. But for us, any British stuff I got was from PBS here in America. So when I was a kid, it was Doctor Who. I became a Whovian completely. There was a Tom Baker version, had the big scarf. It was the Tomorrow People, which I used to teleport. I used to love them. It was Are You Being Served? It was Faulty Towers and Monty Python. Yeah. I mean, those are, and Benny Hill. Those are all the ones I got introduced to through PBS, our little kind of broadcast. You pay for, people had to give like, what do you call it? Donation station.
Right.
So that was my introduction to British stuff. And then later I got to Ab Fab and all this. I mean, I got to other stuff than that. So, but that was like, I said, if I go to England, I want to find Jennifer Saunders. I got to find her. That's what I want to be. So yes. But anyway, so we're talking about our soap. I sent him links to a bio. I said, we're doing this for fun, folks. But actually, might get some really insight into somebody. He's probably people real like this. But also, I had you watch some short clips. I made sure the clips were short and kind of represent him. So I'm just kind of curious, what did you think of the clips? His acting, was it too much? I'm very curious. The fans don't care. They like they'll hear anything. So I'm very curious.
Yeah. Well, I think the acting was, I don't know, is the word kitsch? Kitsch, is that the word that you use? Okay. Which I think it's supposed to be in soap operas, so it's supposed to be kind of melodramatic. So I thought Jeff's acting was as it should have been. You know, I don't think it would work in a proper dramatic movie because it's just a bit too on the nose. But if it's supposed to be kind of this amazingly remarkable, unrealistic thing has happened, and I want you to kind of be shocked by it, then I think that's absolutely fine. Yeah. In terms of Cyrus's character, I have to say that I found him really fascinating. So as you said yourself, for a living, I assess offenders, usually that have a personality disorder or have a mental illness, or at least that's suspected. And there's what's on the surface to him, and there's also a little bit what I think is subtler about him from what I know about Cyrus. So obviously he is a ruthless criminal. He's a master manipulator. He goes out of his way to exploit weaknesses, and he's antisocial. So when I say antisocial, he has no qualms in doing whatever he needs to do. He'll kill people. He is a drug dealer. Well, he's more of a drug importer, I guess, than a drug dealer. So that's the stuff on the surface. But I think what makes him a 3-dimensional character is his background. So we know that he was abused by his father. I think his father had several affairs, and there was a lot of infidelity. And he was neglected by his mother. And he's also abandoned, I believe, by his half brother and his half sister as well. Did I get all of that right?
So part of it, well, yeah, okay, well, he had a contentious relationship with his full brother. That's a full brother.
Okay.
The half sister, they just met a couple of years ago. And yes, she's kind of like, you're not a good person, so you don't deserve. So he feels abandoned, period, by everybody. So you got that part right. Yes, you're in that ballpark.
And I think the abandon is the key word here, because you can kind of see some of his motivations. You know, he's successful in his own way as a criminal, but I think that he's missing something in life, which is just to be accepted by other people. And when I'm kind of analyzing his personality, right, I often get asked when I'm giving sound bites and documentary, is this person a psychopath? This person must be a psychopath. And often the term psychopath is misappropriated, so it's used wrongly. Okay. But I actually think Cyrus is a clinical psychopath, and I'll explain why.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. So people think that psychopaths are just people that act in a kind of unpredictable or unhinged way, or who have no kind of empathy, or who are completely callous, or who act really violently. And a psychopath isn't necessarily those things. Like, a psychopath can be those things, but at the core of what a psychopath is, they don't have any kind of empathy towards other people. They don't care about the rights and wrongs of the other people. But what makes them different from your average criminal is that they're really charming and manipulative and deceitful. So another way of saying that is that a true psychopath blends into society. They are like a chameleon. They don't they don't stay on the fringes of society. They don't make it obvious that they're, criminal masterminds, or not even criminal, that they're kind of master manipulators. They try and be accepted, and they try and sneak into society. And I think that's what Cyrus does. So that's why I think he fits that diagnosis.
This is very fascinating, actually, because I want to ask you then, does he have, with his psychopathy, so then his feelings for his brother and his half-sister and kind of wanting their acceptance, yet he does whatever the F he wants. As you said, actually, those clips, does whatever he wants. Then it's not really true then, right? That he doesn't really care about them, or does he?
Well, this like the thing. So
can he care?
Usually psychopaths don't have any empathy. And when I say empathy, I mean to anybody. So psychopaths can marry, they can have children, they can be quite successful in life. In fact, as a side note, psychopaths are quite successful in the corporate world because they don't mind stabbing anybody in the back, spreading lies, rumors, doing whatever they need to get the promotion or to get ahead of their peers, because they don't have any conscience. And generally speaking, psychopaths are very, very self-centered. They're very narcissistic. So they only really care about themselves. I have, in my clinical practice, assessed very occasionally psychopaths that do have a connection, usually to just one person, often a parent. And that's often in this exact situation. So it's because nobody has really shown them acceptance or love apart from maybe one key person. So, for example, they might have a strong relationship with their mother, but their father and their other siblings and their wider family has rejected them from a young age. So the thing that stands out about Cyrus, despite what I said, he does seem to have some little chinks of empathy. So I know he paid for his mother's hospital treatment, didn't he? Mm-hmm. And I believe that he was trying to raise money or trying to help the general hospital. I don't know enough about this, and I was going to ask you, James, is there an ulterior motive for helping out General Hospital? So is he doing it out of the kindness of his heart, or is he trying to kind of solidify himself as a legitimate businessman? Do you know?
That's a great question. We'll see. Well, now he's in jail. So now he's in jail. So that's the update. Now he's in jail for his crimes. But he seems to be now talking about Bible verses. He still wants his sister's approval somehow, and his brothers somehow. Like he still wants that. They're not giving it to him, kind of, but I feel like they feel a connection to him, kind of, because they is their sibling, which I want to ask you about that in a second, just in general, when it comes to relatives of people like this. But that's the question. We don't know. Like they write him, and he plays it so well. We're not sure exactly, is he, because the first scene I sent you, or one of the scenes I sent you, where the sister goes off on him because her daughter was basically almost blown up, and now she's in a coma. Well, he set that bomb not knowing his niece was in there. It happened, but he comes around going, "Do you need any help?" Like, it's like, she's just like, you saw her as like, what the F? Like, you're coming to me? Like, you're behind. She's like, you're behind this. Like, you're behind, like, you're coming to, so is that a common thing? Can he just do that? I mean, like, it's just like I said, so you don't know, like, does he really feel a little remorse that she would, not remorse that he set the bomb, he had a reason for that,
yeah.
But that the niece was in there? Like, he didn't, it's like, I didn't want to hurt her. I mean, is that true? Can people do that?
Before I answer that, can I just quickly ask, did he know that his sister knew that he set the bomb?
Well, the whole thing is, he's trying to play it off like, she's like, they're going to trace the bomb back to you. Like, the whole thing is like, I mean, I don't know. He may know.
Okay. So I'll answer your question. A true psychopath wouldn't really feel empathy or pity for most other people, including his sister, including his niece. But it could be that Cyrus is trying to hold on to some kind of string of humanity. So another way of saying that is, it might not be that he really feels emotionally connected to his sister or his niece. It might be that he feels like something is missing from his life, and that is this sense of belonging. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is there might be a selfish reason for him showing empathy, if that makes sense. So he's not doing it because he actually cares about the well-being of the niece. He's doing it because he feels that something's missing, and he wants to kind of fill the gap, and that gap is family support.
Well, that's the thing. I think the thing about him, he always says, like, the other scene I sent you where he's like, you killed our father. It was by accident. It was the car, and mom turned away from you. Like, he's not, and he paid for her care all these years, and the brother begrudgingly was like, well, you have the money. I mean, so of course I let you do it. But I feel like, so are you saying that, I mean, I know this is a soap opera, but I mean, I guess, can you hold on to, try to hold on? Is there some part of your brain that goes, I want to hold on to a shred of humanity before I'm all lost? Or is somebody like that cognizant of that? Can they be like, because I guess they better think if I get their support, I'll be a better person. Or I mean, I don't know what the thought would be for them, like what that would be.
Yeah. So again, I think that they can want to seek approval from a family relative, but it is ultimately selfish if they are a clinical psychopath. It's ultimately because they feel something's missing, whether that's an emotion or a connection or relationship. So it's about them wanting to be fulfilled rather than about what's doing the right thing. So for example, and you'll have to tell me, I'm speculating here, if Cyrus was paying for his mother's treatment as a power move, so because he knows that he's got the money and he knows that his siblings are indebted to him if he does that, that would be a perfect example of a psychopath doing something that is not altruistic, but seems to, on the surface, to be selfless, but is actually quite selfish. So that's my answer. Psychopaths can do acts of kindness, but by definition, there's a selfish reason behind those acts.
It's always self-serving on some level.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I want to ask you just like on real life, because I'm just kind of curious. So we're going to mix some real life in here. Have you talked to relatives of your patients at all? I mean, or is it always just you talk to your cases and your patients?
So when I work as an expert witness, I usually only get to assess the patient because they're in a prison. You literally see them for an hour, and you get things like CCTV footage, medical notes, witness statements, which might have some comments from family members. But in a previous role as a forensic psychiatrist, I've worked in these secure psychiatric units, and then absolutely you see their family members because the patients are there for years, sometimes 3-4 years, because they're so dangerous. So you meet their family, usually their parents. Sometimes it's mostly men that I assess. Sometimes they're married. Only a small minority were married. But yeah, you absolutely meet their family. Yeah.
Well, then my next question is, in some of your cases, obviously you can only, can't tell somebody's business, but I'm just curious about the. I don't have a sibling. I have a lot of siblings, and some of them are crazy. No, sorry, kids. But no, I haven't had one who's murdering anybody or something like that I know of. I was curious of what people, when you talk to family members, are they like, I don't know what happened a lot of times, or are they like, I kind of saw idea. Like, I'm just curious for them what it must be like.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
The answer is that it's really, really variable. So some people that I see have, for example, have had serious mental illnesses on and off for their entire adult lives, like schizophrenia. So they're in and out of hospital. Some of them are in and out of prison. And I've definitely seen some parents who've kind of distanced themselves and washed their hands from their responsibility. They turn up to meetings. Well, actually, I'll rephrase that. Sometimes they don't turn up to, ward round meetings and meetings where they're supposed to be supporting their family members, or they do turn up occasionally, but they have the most minimal input. So to me, they probably wouldn't say this directly, but to me, it feels like their family member is a burden. Not just because they've done this one horrific offense, but because their entire lives they've kind of been, from their perspective, draining on the family. So that's one thing I've seen. I've actually seen the opposite as well. So I've seen people who have patients who've kind of gone through quite a destructive cycle again and again and again. Sometimes it's not their fault and it's out of their control, like relapse and mental illness. Sometimes it absolutely is within their control, like violence or drug and alcohol use. And it's quite sad to see. But you do see these very haggard parents that have gone through this kind of harrowing cycle of seeing their son deteriorate over and over again. I've actually seen cases, it's quite rare, but I have seen it where the family member has been the victim. So whether there's been domestic violence, or when a man has committed violence towards their mother when they're in a psychotic kind of state. And I've seen one case, so I talk about her quite extensively in my book, a girl who I call Yasmin, that's not her real name, who actually ended up killing her own 3-year-old nephew in a state of psychosis. And she was completely floridly psychotic at the time, and part of her treatment after we healed her of her psychotic beliefs with the right medication, part of her therapy was actually reconnecting with her brother, who was the father of the child that died. And he was extremely forgiving. I think he realized that she was really, really unwell because she was just a completely different person. And she was like that for many, many months before our medication kicked in. And just sitting there in the room was quite an emotional experience, as you'd imagine, just trying to kind of reconnect this bond. But he was exceptionally forgiving, I think, compared to most family members.
Wow. I look at Cyrus and his tenure on the show, and it just seems like to me he wants he blames everything everybody else, obviously. And so I guess I'm assuming that's common. Obviously, that's not really my fault, right? That's kind of
Yeah,
common.
it's actually one of the specific criteria of being a psychopath is not being able to accept blame and using pushing everything onto external sources. Yeah.
So everybody see like you're the hero in your own story, so to speak. Every villain's a hero in their own story. I always say that. And I think I get that now because I've dealt with a few people, and they must have been psychopaths, I guess, in my life that just they turn it. It's like you feel like we saw the situation, right? The situation happened in front of us. It happened, but everybody else sees it one way, but you turn it and you're like, no, but you did this to me. This happened because of you. You're like, what? And we're all like, what? I've seen that happen. That's such an interesting. I know we call it flipping the script. Is there any kind of is there a term that's a little more clinical for that?
Yeah, there is actually. In psychiatry, we call it an external locus of control. So whoever's to blame is external. So it's an external kind of way of blaming.
External locus?
Locus. Yeah, as in focal point, locus.
Oh, okay. I think like locus. Like, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Locus. So say it again.
External locus of control.
Got it. Okay. Please go ahead.
But I just wanted to add that it's not just psychopaths that have that. So somebody with a paranoid personality disorder, they might always think that not only are things not their fault, but that they're being set up or that people in general have something out for them. So they're they're not necessarily psychotic. So they don't necessarily hear voices or have paranoid delusions that they're being, followed by the FBI or being filmed, that kind of thing. But they misconstrue negative. They misconstrue everything as being kind of threatening. So if somebody, when I say somebody, like remember, if I'm speaking to a nurse on the side of the ward and I laugh because the nurse has said something funny, somebody with paranoid personality disorder will incorrectly assume that I'm laughing at him or saying something about him.
So something in their brain flips it and goes, no, see, they're talking about you. They be talking about the weather or a sandwich. And he's thinking, no, they're talking about me because blank, blank, blank.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason they think that usually is because of abuse that they've suffered as a child. So if they're in a situation in their developing years where they don't have like a safety net or any comfort from their parents, if they have physically, sexually, emotionally abusive parents, they're not everybody by all means, but some people, when they grow up in that environment and have no other kind of external influences, they become paranoid. So they perceive the world as threatening, even after they've left that situation.
So Laura she's been on the show since the 70s. She's Jeannie Francis. Luke and Laura was a big thing. Largest daytime audience of all time in the 80s. I was there for the wedding. I saw it. Like everybody else now. Everybody in the world was like stopped. It was like Charles and Di's wedding and Luke and Laura's wedding. Those were the two big things in 81. But she's kind of seen as like, I guess, the heroine of the show. She's been around for a long time, a heroine. But she had, because of soap opera, like she's accidentally killed some people and she's had to do things here and there. But when he first came on, I didn't send you those scenes, but it maybe in one of the scenes when they were being trapped and he had the long hair, he kind of brings up a little bit. He keeps saying that she's like him because they had a couple, they both have killed somebody kind of. Hers was in self-defense or by accident. His was whatever it is. So do they also yet to try to find a commonality in you? They think it's a commonality in you and use that to exploit. Do they try that too, I guess? The question.
Yeah, absolutely. So a good psychopath is really adept at figuring out what they need to say or do to get somebody on side, either to like them, ideally, or if not to like them, then to be intimidated by them or to listen to them. And that's a different thing for different people. So some people just slightly narcissistic themselves, so they crave praise. So a psychopath will figure that out and they will be, overly nice to that particular person. Some people only really can be controlled through hostility and intimidation. Some people, perhaps in this case of Laura, they need to find some sort of connection with Cyrus. So if he is a psychopath, which I believe he is, he would be really good at kind of testing the water and figuring out quickly, much quicker than the average person, what do I need to do or say to get her on side?
Here's a question I've never asked. And I'm actually very curious. Did you say it hit me as you said that? Are psychopaths good listeners and or observers?
Yes.
I've never asked that before.
Yeah. I think they are, again, because to be good at those things, to be skillful at those things, make you good at manipulating. But, and here's the key point. It's similar to what I said before about how psychopaths can do things that appear to be selfless on the surface, but actually quite selfish. Right. In a similar way, a psychopath can be a good listener, but it's not because they care about your problems or they want to help. It's the opposite. It's because they're kind of tracking information that they can use.
I was like, but that's still, to me, it's fascinating. It's like psychopaths can pull themselves together and be smart in ways, but later again, it's be self-serving against you to get you what they need you to do or react how they need you to react. But I thought that's really interesting because I know folks who are horrible listeners. They're not good observers, and they cause problems too. I mean, because they're not listening or observing. But I always just now talking to you, I'm like, the psychopath has to be a really good observer and stuff because they're trying to collect information to use against you, right? Or use.
Yeah. So an example of somebody who I think is probably a psychopath, obviously I've never assessed her in person, but your viewers would have heard of, is Anna Delvey, from Inventing Anna? Yeah, Inventing Anna, the Netflix show.
Oh, yes. Oh, that show's huge. I've watched it. That show's huge in America. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's somebody who is really good, and probably Elizabeth Holmes as well. So these are two people, young women who are really good at manipulating the system, lying to lots of people. On the surface, they seem really credible. They seem intelligent. They seemed personable. People liked them, and that is key. I think psychopaths are so good at manipulating that most people like them. They don't realize they're psychopaths initially.
Well, I mean, I know it's a whole different show. But just quickly, do you know anything about Casey Anthony?
Yes, yeah, I do.
That's another interesting woman, right? She's very interesting too.
Yeah. I've done some recording in different podcasts about her, actually.
Okay, so check it out, his recordings for that. Those guys, I don't want to get into a whole discussion about it. I mean, that's just another one that was kind of got off on things.
Yeah.
And living her life somewhere. I just never thought of it before until so they're collecting information to use against you or use to get you to come into their bosom, so to speak. What they want you to do.
And because this is kind of my insider tip as a forensic psychiatrist, so you won't find this in any kind of textbooks, but there's all the features of psychopathy, which I've told you about some of them, from being manipulative and cunning, deceitful. There's a few other things like they're quite criminally versatile as well. They don't learn from mistakes, so you can punish a psychopath over and over again, and they basically don't change. But so that's all the stuff that you can find in rating scales and textbooks. One thing that I've noticed, because I've worked on wards with psychopaths, is that they have a constantly changing fluid circle of friends. They don't really have friends from childhood or for a long period of time. They're good at making friends generally because they are, quite charming. And if you meet one for the first time, the average person you meet would probably quite like them because they're interesting. They're interested in you. They're good listeners, as we said. But because they only keep people around to use them, they don't have the need or the want to have long-lasting friendships. So they keep you because they think that you might be able to help them. And then if you can't, or once you already have helped them, then they kind of, not necessarily in a cruel way, but in over time, they'll kind of drop you and they'll pick up someone else. So if you know somebody that's got a cool circle of friends, but doesn't really feel particularly connected or deeply attached to any of those friends and then changes those friends, that's a very strong sign that they're a high functioning psychopath.
So that's half of Hollywood. Got it. I'm Hollywood. Just joking. Kind of. Yes, that makes sense to me, Dr. Doss. Yes. So as we start to kind of get to the tail end of this, now the next question to me would be, so Cyrus is claiming, in quotes, I'm doing air quotes, that he's trying to change. He's in prison, and he's showing signs that I'm not sure, but he's reading the Bible, and he was stabbed, he was shivved, he survived, but he dreamt of his angelic sister, and her trying to save him and everything. And she said almost what you said, I think, was like, you got to do it for yourself, not try to do it for me. Like, you got to do this, it's up to you. Like, that's kind of funny you just said about that, the psychopath. She kind of said that to him on some level. Like, no, don't, it's not about me. It was about you. But can psychopaths change?
Can psychopaths change? That's a good question. Yes, they can theoretically. The vast majority of the time, all right, I'll rephrase that. The way that they perceive the world and their core narcissism and selfishness, and their lack of empathy. So the fact that they don't care deeply about anybody, whether it's a friend, whether it's their spouse, whether it's their children, and they would use an opportunity, or they would see an opportunity to manipulate other people. None of that can change, right? But their behavior can change. And there's usually, from my clinical experience, the small proportion of psychopaths that do change, do it again, comes back to selfish reasons, because they spent all their life going in and out of prison. They might be really good con artists, but they've got caught umpteen number of times, or they might actually be violent. As I said, not all psychopaths are violent, but they can be, and they've been caught a number of times and they've gone to prison. So it's usually quite late on in their lives. I'm assuming Cyrus is what, in his 50s or 60s?
I'm assuming they never said his age, but I'm assuming, because Laura's, I'm assuming one of the two. Yeah.
Let's say early 60s. It usually does happen actually about that age, because they've gone through decades of living their life a certain way, and then they kind of find themselves to be single, don't really have family, or don't have family that love them, don't really have any kind of necessarily purpose in life, and they just kind of regret their ways. But the key point is not because they have regret about the people they've hurt. It's not about that. It's just that they are so fed up with the way their lives have gone so far that they just, out of desperation, they want to try something different. So to answer your question, it's possible that Cyrus is genuinely trying to turn his life around. I think it's a bit weird that he's found religion that quickly. If he's a clinical psychopath, that seems a bit dodgy to me. If he was to change it, it'd probably be kind of gradual changes. To suddenly say that he's changed his whole outlook overnight sounds a bit fishy to me.
And it sounds fishy to them. They're like, okay. They're like, sure. They're doing like you, like, sure. But I always wonder about that, because I mean, I guess, okay, well, what I say is kind of one more. Now you got me thinking about one more question. So are psychopaths born, or is it a nature versus nurture thing? Like, what is that in your opinion?
I think it's both. So there's certain personality traits, like inherent personality traits, that have nothing to do with the environment. So people who are impulsive, people who naturally lack fear, people who naturally lack empathy, all of those things would predispose you to being a psychopath. But on top of that, there is your environment. So there is nurture as well. So if you have all of those character traits, plus you were, you were brought up in an environment of abuse, plus opportunism, I guess. So if a psychopath has opportunities to break the law from a young age, or not even to break the law, but opportunities to lie and manipulate from a young age, and is successful in those early experiences, all of those things in combination will increase their chances of eventual psychopathy.
I mean, you always thought that the bad seeds, for real, they're really bad seeds. And I don't know, I've seen some kids, I'm like, I don't know about you later. I don't know. I'm a little nervous. I'm like, a little nervous. There are some bad kids out there, I'm telling you. It's kind of a little scary. But then also there's just folks who act out. I always say that clearly. There's some kids and just, they're acting out and things are happening. They're not bad kids. But I'm half joking. But I've seen some like, I don't know what's going on later. Well, watch them another 10 years, see where they're at. That's crazy, because it's just funny, because psychopaths just walk among us, right? They're just people walk among us. It could be I may have psychopathic friends. I might have some friends who've never hurt me, who just are, I don't know, people. It's a weird thing to me. It's that there's those disorders or those disabilities you don't see. That's always fascinating to me. That you just don't see them, and they're not the physical type where you can see when someone see a leg, they don't have a leg. You see it. But these other ones, you just don't know. However you see them, whenever you see them, it's like, oh, they seem fine to me. I see them all the time. They say hi every morning. But
especially psychopaths, because, as I was saying before, they're really good at being chameleons. They're really good at hiding it. So I think you only can really tell, first of all, if other people have had run-ins with them and have been manipulated or used by them, they can tell you. That's one possibility. But the other possibility is that if they manipulate you, you don't realize until it's already happened.
Yeah, I think of Dexter. That's not a story. I don't know if you heard of Dexter, the show. But that's not a story. But I'm just like, I mean, what you do, Dr. Doss, is actually very fascinating. I don't know how you do it. But if people ask me when I was a nurse, how can I see broken bones and blood? I mean, I have no problem. Needles, I have no problem. So I guess it's just we're those kind of people. We're made for this kind of stuff, I guess.
Yeah, and also it is really genuinely interesting. So when I see people that have done quite horrific and violent things, you know, I'm able to compartmentalize the emotions that I might have or my judgment towards them. I'm able to separate that from my clinical role.
That's so interesting. Well, Dr. Doss, thanks for being on the show, having fun with us doing this kind of intimate portrait of Cyrus Renault as played by Jeff Comer. So thanks for doing that. And where can folks actually find you and your real work and true crimes, all the stuff that you do?
Cool. Well, thank you for having me on, James. Really enjoyed the chat, and you picked a very interesting case as well. So people can find me on my YouTube channel, which is called A Psych for Sore Minds, and I do kind of psychiatric analysis of real true crime cases, usually high-profile ones, and break down things that have happened in individuals' backgrounds and that might shape their personalities. With a little sprinkle of humor. So you can find me there. I've also got a book called In Two Minds, which is available on Amazon, and that is my professional memoirs. So I've kind of handpicked my most fascinating cases, everything from people who've committed offences against children to people that stabbed strangers to con artists who faked mental illness, just the ones that have stuck out to me in my career.
And check out my interview with him, our chat about the Menendez brothers. It's on A Lot of Help with James Lott Jr. It's out as of today, as a recording. It's out. Check that out also, and you can see something about. And we have also our interviews. So there's a bunch of things. Just go on my channel and type in Dr. Doss. It'll pop up several times, and you can see more of what he's talking. His job is fascinating. I wouldn't want to do it, but his job is very fascinating. So I let him talk about it. I can ask him questions about it. So that's what we do here. I'm James Lott Jr. AlotofHelp.com. Is my website, of course, but I am James Lott Jr. all over the place. We're all James Lott Jr. sold everywhere. JLJ Media, of course. GH Spotlight, GH Dirty Deeds are also on our Facebook page, GH Spotlights. Check that out. Thanks to the 6,000 people on that page. I really appreciate you guys being there, making these shows a huge hit for us. Everyone, please take care of yourselves and look out for those psychopaths.